Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's CADLink webinar. I'm Wendy Levine, the Marketing Director here at DRI. Presenting the QBuild CADLink system for us today is Jeffrey Lamb. Jeff has a degree in mechanical engineering from Ryerson University in Canada with a focus on manufacturing and mechatronics. He has been with QBuild for 3 years, where he specializes in CAD ERP integration, actively helping manufacturing companies save engineering time and maintain data accuracy. Jeff, you ready?
I sure am. All right, thanks, Wendy, and good afternoon, everyone. So I'll be running the demonstration and webinar today for CADLink. A brief agenda here. We're going to go through a bit of an introduction about who we are as QBuild, and primarily we see a products list on the screen here. Primarily talk about CADLink and how you'll be able to easily and quickly integrate and put your bill of materials data from your CAD, PDM, and PLM system and get that over into CSI. So first off, QBuild, we are an Infor solution partner. We're the only certified and supported CAD integrator to CSI. So we're supported by Infor. We work very closely with them and the channel partners. And overall, even before becoming a solution partner, we've been integrating with Infor solutions for over a decade now. So we've built up a lot of experience integrating to CSI and SyteLine. We actually began back, over 10 years ago now with a simple program linking to AutoCAD. But today we actually integrate to over 30 different CAD, PDM, and PLM systems on the market here. So of course we got the mechanical CAD systems like SolidWorks and Creo and Inventor, but we also do integrations to electrical CAD systems like AutoCAD Electrical, Altium, Mentor Graphics, and PDM, PLM systems like I've mentioned, even all the way to construction CAD systems like Tekla. So whatever CAD system, wherever your engineers are doing that designing, we'll be able to integrate to it. If we haven't done it already, we're always looking to do new CAD, PDM, and PLM integrations. So definitely still talk to us, and we'd be glad to talk a bit more about what sort of experience we have with the CAD systems you have, or how we can help you out. So what we find for people who do not, have CADLink yet, is that they usually enter bill of materials into CloudSuite Industrial in one of two ways. One of which is the brute force or the manual data entry method, and what the other one is called is the blind push. So when you do an export-import sort of data entry. So the problem with the brute force method, as you can probably assume, is that it's highly error-prone and very time-consuming. It's only really okay for very small engineering departments that usually work with a small bill of materials that does not change very often. However, once you start increasing in product complexity, and if you're being more and more exposed into the engineer to order, manufacturer to order type of business, you're going to be making a lot more bill of materials changes. And if you continue with the brute force method, those hours, those wages that you end up using for data entry will continue to add up, not to mention the possibilities for errors. So that's the problem with having a brute force method. And on the other hand, with a blind push, this is an upgrade to manually entering this data into CSI. However, there are still some issues with this blind push. When I'm talking about blind push here, I'm talking about having a CSV or an Excel export of the BOM from maybe your CAD, PDM, or PLM package, and then importing that into CSI. Very often it requires massaging of the data. More often than not, the format that's exported from your CAD system is not the exact format that CSI would need to have in order to import it in. So there's going to be manually rearranging columns, copying and pasting, all that kind of stuff in order to massage that data and have it fit nicely into CSI. Another complication is that it's not a bidirectional connection like CADLink is. With CADLink, if you make change in one environment, it'll push and it'll update in both CAD and in ERP. Whereas with the blind push, it's called a blind push because it's just a one-way push into the ERP system, and oftentimes you're not even able to validate what you're being pushed, what's being pushed into CSI. You can only hope that things like character limits or any other data restrictions are complied. So the alternative to these two is what we have in CADLink, which is a direct link between your CAD, your PDM, or PLM system with Infor CloudSuite Industrial. So it's a very quick and simple way of getting your bill of materials from a system like SolidWorks, which I'll be demoing from, and get that over into CSI. So at this point, I'm going to tab out into my SolidWorks here. There we go. And in order to start using CADLink, all I need to do is just to have the model open here like I do. So let's say I'm an engineer and I just finished making some changes to this bill of materials. There's some components here that maybe I just drew and I gave new part numbers to. Other components maybe I've changed a description or a specification, some metadata that I've altered. Otherwise, maybe some quantity changes. I've removed some components or added some existing components, some nuts, some bolts, things like that. All of this I've done inside of SolidWorks, but now I need to have this updated, this bill of materials updated inside of CSI. So I have the model open, I go to my toolbar at the top, and our software is built right in. So without having to leave the environment that engineers are familiar with and comfortable with, they can launch our software and we will begin that direct connection. So what's going to very quickly here, when I click this button, what's going to very quickly happen is that CADLink will compare the bill of materials from CAD to what's currently inside of CSI and load up this screen for me here. This is what we call the bill of materials grid. And on the screen, you'll see a whole bunch of different colored highlighting. Each one of these colors telling me, the user, something different about the differences in the bill of materials. So one color means one thing, another color means another. I'll go over what each one of these colors mean. First off, the white line items are any components that are not highlighted. These are components that already exist inside of CSI. So maybe components that someone has defined in the past. Maybe we've used this across multiple products, and I'm just featuring it in my model here. Those would be examples of these white lines, components that once again already exist inside of my ERP system. On the other hand, we have these green line items here. Green lines are components that do not exist in CSI yet. These would be my new parts that I just drew, and I gave these new part numbers to. What's going to happen here is that if I were to click the Save button on the top left-hand corner, CADLink will create each one of these components inside of my ERP using data coming directly from my SolidWorks properties. So my part number, my description, unit of measure, all this data the engineer has already entered once into CAD. So we'll take that exact data, use it to create the part inside of CSI, and not only that, we'll also insert the component to the bill of materials that's seen on the model. So this green part here, 1.1.2, will be created and then inserted to 1.1. So with CADLink, no longer will you have to manually enter and create parts into CSI, nor will you have to arrange BOMs manually, because CADLink will preserve those parent-child relationships, these multi-level BOMs, as it's carried over into CSI. So that's where a lot of time saving takes place, because yeah, you can imagine for this bill of materials here, I only have 4, 5, 6 new parts here, but for another bill of materials, with maybe 100 or multiple hundreds of new parts, how long that'll take someone manually to key in to CSI versus CADLink will be able to accomplish these things in virtually seconds. Now, the next color is the yellow field. And yellow field are what we call field level discrepancies. So for this line here, 1.1.7, it's a white line item, which means that it already exists in CSI, but when it compared the description for this component between what's in SOLIDWORKS and what's in CSI, it noticed that it does not match. And I can right-click and see what that discrepancy is. So it looks like, in fact, the SOLIDWORKS description is empty, whereas in CloudSuite Industrial, this component is saved with the description sprue bushing. So whenever there's a discrepancy, it'll highlight yellow, and you can right-click and see what it is. There's another one here. I can right-click, see that in SOLIDWORKS, ejector base plate, whereas in CloudSuite Industrial, we got that -1 at the end here. Whenever I'm in one of these menus, I can pick between which one I'd like to keep. So if I like that SOLIDWORKS description more, I can click on that. Oh, run into a bit of an issue here. Let me try this one. Okay, so whenever I right-click and enter into one of these menus here, what I can do is that I'll be able to select between one and the other to pick the one I like to keep. So I pick on the CAD one, it will change to the CAD description, and when I save, it will update to what's inside of, it'll update the description in CloudSuite Industrial to what's currently, what will be my CAD description. And vice versa. If I leave this as the description from what's in CSI, I'll be able to save and actually push this back to my SOLIDWORKS model. And lastly, if neither of these are correct, I can enter a brand new description. And what happens when I enter a brand new description is that it pushes bidirectionally. It'll update both at the same time. So the whole point of this is to make sure that for any existing data, or rather for any data that's for existing components in both CAD and in ERP, we're going to make sure that it is matching and that it's consistent between the two systems. And by doing so, you'll eliminate confusion and any potential for errors. And you'll have data that's trustworthy. There's no there's no benefit from having not matching data, inconsistent data, and not knowing which set to trust. Do you trust the engineer's drawing, or do you trust what's in ERP? When you have those the same, there's no confusion, no wasted time there. So that's the yellow field. Yellow fields are discrepancies. Gray lines are components that were removed from my CAD model. So let's say last week I pushed and saved this bill of materials into CloudSuite Industrial, and since then maybe I've replaced it with a different component, or I removed these from my CAD model. Since these were removed, now when CADLink compares the BOM, it sees that these components are still on my CSI bill of materials, so that they will also be removed as well, just so the bill of materials will stay in sync. So those are the gray line items. All in all, once again, so far, no saving has taken place so far. All we've done is just analyze and compare the differences between the two BOMs. So now, hopefully, now that I've gone through the explanation, you can very quickly tell from this bill of materials, we got a few new parts here that CADLink will create inside of CloudSuite Industrial. There's some discrepancies in the data that I can, try and resolve before I save, as well as some components that'll be removed from the BOM. This is a replacement for, potentially having, let's say, the SOLIDWORKS drawing or the AutoCAD drawing up on one monitor, and then having CloudSuite Industrial open on the other monitor, and then trying to eyeball the differences between the two, making sure that every single part number is right, every single quantity and description is right. Instead of that, we bring that into one screen and we programmatically highlight all the differences for you and where those discrepancies are. So beyond that, there's a lot of things that you can do on this screen. Very common thing that I like to go over is on the right-hand side here. So on the left-hand side, we see a lot of the CAD or the bill materials related fields. Of course, part number, description, revision, quantity, unit measure, very common fields that you need to, of course, define a part or bill materials inside of CloudSuite Industrial. But now on the right-hand side, we have lots and lots of fields here that are more CSI specific. So, the source, the product code, ABC code, all these fields here that you like to configure and trigger or assign when you're creating a part or a BOM inside of CSI, you'll also be able to do so here, either by hand. So, if there's a drop-down menu, you can pick which product code that you'd like to assign for this component. Right into another issue here. Or, you can also programmatically do this using, we have a logic module where it automates kind of like the way that these fields are defaulted. So if you want, let's say, all new parts to initialize with product code, FG200 or something like that, or all new assemblies to, be marked with another ABC code, all this you'll be able to do. Using our logic module. So you won't have to manually pick for every single component. And lastly, one more thing I want to cover in the demo is the job structure, being able to put together the routings and operations for your bill materials. So not only will CADLink create parts and create BOMs, resolve discrepancies for you as it carries the data over into CSI, it'll also be able to create that job structure for you as well and get that initialized into CSI. So I already have a bit of a job structure filled out inside of CSI already, as we can see from this panel here. But really, when it comes to moving these around and assigning these structures, it's as easy as dragging and dropping these components. So what I can do is that I can actually right-click on this top level and add a new route. This shows up at the bottom here. And when I click on this, I can assign a new work center. So let's say this needs to go to engineering. Now that that is there, I'll be able to drag and drop these components, essentially assigning these materials to this new operation that I have on the job now. So that's how you'll be able to handle that and push that data over with the same push as the bill materials and have it already there. So I'm just going to head back to my PowerPoint here. So what are we talking about in terms of time savings? So when it comes to being in the engineer to order, manufacturer to order industry, it's very common that each engineer is able to create an hour of BOM work every day. So an hour of the potentially 8 hours that they spend at work is data entry, creating parts and creating BOMs or arranging bill of materials inside of CSI. So CADLink is able to reduce this to 2 to 3 minutes or virtually seconds, however long you might end up configuring the bill of materials inside of the CADLink interface. So that given those numbers, if we're talking about 8 engineers, then it's potentially 8 hours of day. By 250 days a year, we're talking about time savings of almost 2,000 hours per year. you'd also be very easily to be able to calculate this based on how much you think your engineers will spend on data entry a day, and then multiply that by the number of engineers on the team. So when we're talking about 2,000 hours per year, and then the potential of saving any shop floor confusion, mistakes in the bill of materials, we're talking about overall savings of even over $65,000 per year. What we like to do is that after we like to have these kind of private demonstrations set up with people who are interested in CADLink, but one of the things that we like to calculate for them is that we actually have a calculator to actually put numbers to this based on your specific how many engineers you have and how long you think as well. So we'd be glad to work with you guys to kind of calculate and talk through the cost justification for this. So recapping on the benefits here. So of course, one of the main things is reducing engineering costs. So instead of having engineering spend time on non-value added activities like data entry or BOM management in the ERP, having them save that time and being able to do more engineering instead, more designing instead, that's one of the goals of CADLink. And then eliminating double and triple data entries. Once again, the data is, more often than not already available and entered once into the CAD system. So we don't want to have them have to enter that data manually again a second time into the ERP. With CADLink, we take what's already in CAD and use it to automate the creation of parts and BOMs inside of CSI. The second benefit is having improved accuracy or consistent data between engineering and CAD and production in ERP. So by doing so, you're reducing things like scrap or wrong build situations, increasing purchasing accuracy, and overall just having cleaner data across the two systems. And going back to that point I made earlier about not having that confusion between two sets of data and not knowing which to trust, whether it's the engineering drawing and the engineering data or the production data inside the ERP. When it's consistent and it's the same, it becomes easy. The business impact of CADLink here, so we're talking about having cleaner data and less entry, less time and work needed for the user when they're at this step of bringing the engineering data over into CSI. This allows them to free up engineering and production resources, having a higher throughput of projects, so now being able to process and chew through more and more projects in the same time frame because less time is spent on this step or on the data entry aspect. Then this leads to a better overhead ratio. So with CADLink, it is completely scalable with the other solutions that we offer, as well as Infor offers that well. So, if you're talking about having just 4 CAD users, then something, starting off with CADLink is a great place to start. Chances are you're starting to have a lot of that BOM data work that you should start automating using CADLink. Once you get to the 10 CAD user mark, you're going to start wanting to think about engineering change and workflow, in which we have an ECN manager application that fits nicely and integrates completely with CADLink and CSI to conduct the engineering change approvals and controlling those things when bill of materials changes happen and requires those approvals. And then lastly, when you get up to the 25 CAD user and beyond mark, Infor offers a great PLM that is fully integratable to CSI, and it makes sense to head towards there. So all of these things, there's a very clear path from CADLink as you scale and as your company grows to that 25+ CAD user mark.